This week on Worldview, G-2 shock as Trump and Xi meet in Busan, agree to cut trade, tariffs and export restrictions. What does this mean for India, the Quad and a multipolar world? We'll also get you the latest roundup on India-US relations. Hello and welcome. This is Worldview at The Hindu. I'm Suhasini Haider. Now, 9 months into his second term in office and after months of serious US-China tensions over trade, American President Donald Trump met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This at the US base in Busan, South Korea. Both leaders were there in South Korea for the APEC summit being held in Gwangju. And even before the meeting began, Trump had woken up the world to its importance with this social media post that said the G2 would convene shortly.
We will be having some discussions. I think we've already agreed to a lot of things, and we'll agree to some more right now. But President Xi is a great leader of a great country, and I think we're going to have a fantastic relationship for a long period of time.
China-US relations have remained stable on the whole. Given our different national conditions, we do not always see eye to eye with each other. And it is normal for the two leading economies of the world to have frictions now and then. You and I, at the helm of China-US relations, should stay the right course and ensure the steady sailing forward of the giant ship of China-US relations. I always believe that China's development goes hand in hand with your vision to make America great again. Our two countries are fully able to help each other succeed and prosper together.
After the meeting, Trump referred to his talks with Xi as 12 on a scale of 1 to 10. And while many of those outcomes are yet to be analyzed, the broad results, according to Trump, because the Chinese Foreign Ministry statement is much more about the sentiments expressed than on the actual concrete outcomes. But what we know is China and US agreed on a one-year truce. China said it will lift restrictions on exports of rare earth minerals that was due to come into effect from November 1st and now won't. The US, for its part, slashed tariffs on China from 57% to 47%, which means India with 50% is the most tariffed country. Brazil also at 50%, but those might soon be dropped as the US Senate has voted against them. Third, China reportedly agreed to restart its imports of US soya bean. This was important as US farmers were facing massive losses after China stopped all imports from the US, in fact, buying from others, including Argentina. Fourth, Trump said he will travel to China in April 2026, will invite Xi Jinping to the US after that. Remember, in 2026, China is hosting the APEC while the US will host the G20. Beyond the bilateral, the two leaders discussed global issues, sparking some concerns about whether all this bonhomie would shift the global power balance.
Ukraine came up very strongly. We talked about it for a long time, and we're both going to work together to see if we can get something done. We agreed the sides are, locked in and fighting, and sometimes you have to let them fight, I guess. Crazy.
In fact, Trump seemed to give China a free pass on its import of Russian oil, even as he repeated that India has already agreed to cut its purchases.
The oil, he's been buying oil from Russia for a long time. It takes care of a big part of China. And, I can say India's been very good at that.
And here's what he said on Taiwan.
Never came up. Taiwan never came up. It's not discussed, actually.
Now, the reference to the two sides deciding together on global issues has triggered some alarm bells. So let's just give you a quick note on why the term G2 is significant. G2 refers to an exclusive club. It's a notional theory of the world's two largest economies, US and China, like the G20 or G7. It was first proposed in 2005 in a book by economist Fred Bergston, and then got some currency as Obama administration officials were referring to it while negotiating with China on global issues like climate protocols, non-proliferation pacts that they thought were very important. US-China tensions, of course, soared over the South China Sea and China's aggressions in other places, and by 2011, the idea of G2 was dropped, was not talked about. And while Obama never actually used the term himself, here was Trump's reference the first by any US leaders. So, what are the pluses and the minuses for India coming out of the Trump-Xi summit? On the plus side, one has to remember that global stability requires the US and China to have a working relationship. In fact, too much friction between two global powers leads to polarization and then demands for countries, from countries like India, to pick a side. The agreements on trade, reduction of tariffs certainly holds out some hope that India too could see a revision in the massive tariffs 50% the US has imposed. In September, the first full month that those tariffs took effect, Indian shipments to the US were down 20% and orders will be further down. China's relief on rare earth minerals helps India as well. That has been facing a crunch over semiconductors as a result of China's restrictions first in April and then the threat of these new restrictions on any third country exports, which for the moment have now been suspended. When asked about the summit, how did the government react? The Ministry of External Affairs didn't endorse the summit, didn't criticize it, confirmed the rare earth relaxation.
Yes, we confirm that some Indian companies have received licenses for importing rare earth magnets from China. As far as the question of the latest talks and relaxations that have happened between US and China as to how it's going to play into our domain, that I will come back to you. We have to yet look at. I am not aware of the technicalities, but we will come back to you.
What are the cons then, the worries about the Busan summit and how it played out? To begin with, India has a historical distrust of the G-2 concept from its start in the 2000s, as it focuses the US on placating China, ignoring concerns about China's aggression in this region. Second, in particular, the question comes up, what does US and China reducing tensions and making friends mean for groupings like the Quad and its agenda for a free and open Indo-Pacific? Remember, during his visit to Japan, Trump didn't refer to the Quad, although Prime Minister Takaichi did. Third, Trump's reduction of Chinese tariffs puts more pressure on India. It's an outlier in the world that has already made trade agreements with the US, and there's more pressure now to close that trade deal, perhaps on US terms. US and Chinese economies combined can effectively subvert all global and multilateral organizations and really throw the more egalitarian world order off balance. As one expert in this piece I'd written said, India wants a multipolar world, not a shared hegemony. Now, the improvement in US-China ties also comes at a time when India-US ties are facing headwinds. So the shortlist, because we speak about this often on Worldview, one, a trade deal, still not done, although officials claim there is some progress. Second, Trump continues to insist that he had a role in ending Operation Sindoor, that ceasefire he mediated, he says, between India and Pakistan, that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi and that 7 planes were shot down. All unverified claims as far as India is concerned. Now, Trump also claims that India has bowed to his demand and is cutting Russian oil, making things a bit awkward between Delhi and Moscow. There's no question that India's oil imports from Russia are going down, but India would not like that to be seen as something it is doing under pressure from the US. And there's no let up on anti-immigration efforts targeting Indians and in Trump MAGA support attacks on Indian origin Americans. The tensions have even led to speculation that Prime Minister Modi has skipped 3 important events: the UN General Assembly, the Gaza Peace Conference in Egypt, and ASEAN in Kuala Lumpur, just to avoid being in the same place as Trump until these issues are resolved. Amidst the gloom, I should add 2 bits of good news: that the US gave India a 6-month extension to the sanctions waiver on Chabahar port. Remember, this has been a big concern. And Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed a new framework agreement for defense cooperation for the next 10 years. This is regularly revised. So what's Worldview's take? Given the structural rivalry between US and China, the idea of the G2 is unlikely to endure, just going by history. Even so, India must always be prepared to go it alone in a world where the 2 most powerful countries endorse each other while aiming to carve out spheres of influence for themselves. At a time like this, India can ill afford to be absent on the world stage, only due to bilateral tensions with one country, as it misses out on reaffirming important partnerships with West Asia, with South Asia, East Asia, as well as the global South. Time for some Worldview reading recommendations, and I spoke about that Fred Buxton book, that first proposed the G-2, and it's called the US and the World Economy, Foreign Economic Policy for the Next Decade. That was in 2005. There's a newer one called United States versus China, The Quest for Global Economic Leadership, also by Fred Bergsten. Then there's a book called Destined for War, Can America and China Escape the Thucydides Trap by Graham Allison. I think I've spoken about this before, but it's certainly a very, very interesting book about is there an inevitability to the US-China conflict? The third I've certainly spoken about before, Fateful Triangle, How China Shaped US-India Relations During the Cold War. It's a look at history through the archives by Tanvi Madan. And another book of essays called A New Cold War, Henry Kissinger and the Rise of China. It's edited by Sanjay Baru and Rahul Sharma. There's a chapter by me on South Asia there. Finally, there's The New Cold War, How the Contest Between the US and China Will Shape Our Century. Came out, I think, last year by Robin Niblett. So we hope you enjoy reading these and do join us again here on Worldview from the team. Thanks for watching.